The Star Wars movies are no strangers to alterations, revisions, and changes. Whether you're discussing the age-old debate of the theatrical cuts versus the special editions of the original trilogy, the fabled 6-hour cut of The Phantom Menace and the 4-hour cut of Revenge of the Sith, or even the slight changes made to the prequels during their journey from the cinema screen onto DVD. For decades, Star Wars fans have been arguing about which version of which film fans should be watching. I've already done 2 other videos discussing this topic, so if you want to hear my full thoughts on that, go and check out those videos. Today, I wanted to talk about an alternate cut of a Star Wars movie that, from my experience, a lot of fans have never even heard of. In the latter half of 2002, after Attack of the Clones had already been released earlier that year, the film was actually re-released in IMAX cinemas. While it is extremely common now for major blockbusters to be released in regular cinema formats and IMAX simultaneously, IMAX was just only beginning to be used for feature films in the early 2000s. In fact, Attack of the Clones was among the first feature-length films to be presented in the format. Of course, Attack of the Clones was edited and adjusted so it could be presented in the IMAX format. While one would assume that this would just be a case of adjusting the film's aspect ratio to fit an IMAX screen, there was actually another crucial part of the process. The runtime of Attack of the Clones was actually shortened by 22 minutes for the IMAX cut. But this wasn't a creative decision, it was a compromise to get the film playing in an IMAX theater. Now that the format has properly developed, much longer films can now be shown fully in IMAX. But in 2002, IMAX presentations were limited to 2 hours maximum due to the nature of the equipment. Attack of the Clones had a 2-hour and 22-minute runtime, so to get the film onto an IMAX screen, some stuff had to be cut out. So, as a result, an IMAX cut of Attack of the Clones was created, and in a unique turn of events, this cut was shorter than the theatrical version. But the funniest thing about this cut is that many people who actually saw it swear that it is actually better than the longer theatrical cut. So, what's so special about the IMAX cut of Attack of the Clones? Well, it's basically just Attack of the Clones presented in an IMAX format with 22 minutes of footage cut out. While there are no official sources to confirm everything that was cut out and changed, according to multiple posts online and fan recounts, this is everything that was cut out of Attack of the Clones for the 2-hour-long IMAX cut. The first scene with Padme, Bail Organa, and Yoda in Palpatine's office is gone. The bit where Jar Jar meets Obi-Wan and Anakin at the elevator and the awkward reunion of Anakin and Padme was removed. The scene instead starts with Obi-Wan and Anakin talking about how they're going to find the person responsible. After Obi-Wan leaps out the window after the assassin droid, the end of the scene where Dorme checks on Padme is trimmed off. The part where the assassin droid tries to scrape Obi-Wan against the building was removed, but the rest of the Coruscant chase remains intact. In Padme's quarters, there is a small trim of Anakin playing with the floating ball, and possibly the part where he says he's ready for the trials. The discussion between Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Yoda is cut out. Padme saying goodbye to Dorme was trimmed out. The library scene with Obi-Wan was completely removed. The very end of the arrival on Naboo, where Anakin and Padme are walking down the long curved columned pathway, was trimmed, and so was the entire meeting with Queen Jamila. When Anakin and Padme arrive at the Naboo Spa and Resort Island, there are quite a few minor trims. The part about
"Here everything is soft"
to the hand touch and the back rub was clipped out. As far as the rest of the Naboo scenes go, the only ones that were left in were the dinner table scene and a heavily trimmed fireplace scene. There is no picnic and there's no shark riding. On Kamino, the scene where Obi-Wan heads back out to his ship to have R4 send a message back to Coruscant was trimmed out. Boba's firing of the Slave 1 cannons was trimmed out of the Jango fight on Kamino. Anakin's nightmare scene is gone, and it goes straight to Anakin in his meditative pose on the balcony. On Tatooine, 3PO's introduction of Anakin and Padme to Owen and Beru was cut, meaning Beru now has no spoken lines in the film. In the Sand People confession scene, the beginning part in which Anakin comments about
the shifter broke
was cut. The ending of the confession scene is the original ending, but it has a slight dialogue change for Padme. Dooku's entrance into Obi-Wan's floating cell was trimmed off, along with the end portion with the
"It may be difficult to secure your release"
line. The scene in Palpatine's office where he manipulates Jar Jar to consider making the emergency powers motion in the Senate was completely removed. Yoda and Mace's conversation where Mace states that their abilities to use the Force has been diminished was cut out. On Geonosis, the part where C-3PO and R2 argue after Anakin and Padme exit the ship was trimmed off. The factory scene was shortened by numerous quick cuts and edits. And finally, after the factory scene, the final battle along with the rest of the ending of the film is reportedly completely intact. Also, as a quick side note, the end credits were also changed to list all the cast and crew names in much faster succession. And that's Attack of the Clones as it was presented in IMAX. It's clear that when it came to cutting the film down that there was a focus on shortening scenes rather than removing entire sequences, chipping the film down in the least invasive fashion possible. From what I've read about the cut, it's easy to see that there was a focus on keeping every major set piece and action scene intact, which makes sense considering that IMAX is a format that thrives on spectacle and not dialogue. Anakin and Padme's story clearly suffered the most from these cuts as they lost entire scenes together that fleshed out their relationship. Besides that, the Senate and the Jedi Council lost the most screen time. As a result, Attack of the Clones becomes a much tighter film in terms of runtime, and there is less space between action sequences. But does that result in a better film? From what I can infer by reading about the cut, there is definitely a chance that I might enjoy this version more, considering the highlight of Attack of the Clones for me personally is the action, which this cut highlights. As a standalone film, the shorter length and focus on action would make for a better isolated experience, but as the second film in a trilogy, I think this cut doesn't serve the overall story as well as the standard cut. Regardless of whether or not you think the dialogue and romance between Anakin and Padme is any good, the more time we see with them on screen together, the more believable their relationship becomes. The cut scenes with Palpatine and the Jedi Council are also missed as they all serve to foreshadow the return of the Sith in Episode 3. So while Attack of the Clones is a tighter film in the IMAX cut, it doesn't serve the story of the whole trilogy as well as the theatrical version. It sacrifices story for spectacle, which suits IMAX, but not a movie that is the midway point of a trilogy. To be honest, the story behind this cut is quite simple. It's a version of Attack of the Clones made for a special event, and unlike most alternate cuts of films, it shortens the runtime significantly and I would argue detracts from the overall story. Regardless, it's still a shame that the IMAX version hasn't had another showing since 2002, at least as far as I know, but I'm guessing it wasn't a smash hit since Revenge of the Sith never received an IMAX release. While I would have to see the actual IMAX cut to give a definitive opinion on it, I can believe that people would think that it's better than the original cut, but I still believe that the theatrical cut better serves the greater story of the trilogy. Regardless, Attack of the Clones IMAX cut and release is a largely forgotten theatrical event in the Star Wars fandom. I only recently found out about it, and I thought that a lot of other fans would be interested in discovering that it exists. Attack of the Clones is a much more influential film than a lot of people give it credit for, and being one of the first feature films to be presented in IMAX only adds to this legacy. So, What do you guys think? Does this IMAX cut of Attack of the Clones sound like a better film to you? Did any of you actually get to watch it in the cinema back in 2002? Let me know in the comments below. That's all from me today, guys. Until the next video, stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy. Thanks, guys.